Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Sada Shiva Samarambham, Shankaracharya Madhyamam, Asmadacharya Paryantam, Vande Guru Paramparam. In our last session, we started discussion on the text Drig Drishya Viveka, the discrimination between the seer and the seen. In these 4 points, in this seer-seen discrimination, we have come across. One is that the seer and the seen are different to each other. Seer can't be seen and seen can't be seer. That is number one. Number two is that seer can't illumine itself, nor the seen can illumine itself. Number three is that the same entity cannot be simultaneously seer and the seen. And number four is that seer is inert, seer is sentient, and seen is inert. So these things came up. And the examples we saw between the seer and the seen, one of the sense organs like eye is the seer, and then all the colors and forms are the seen objects for the eye. So eye remaining the same, the colors and forms may be different. Moreover, the colors and forms which the eyes perceive doesn't affect the eye. Similarly with other sense organs like ear, nose, a tongue, and the skin, a sense of touch. Similarly, we have also seen that the eye itself becomes the object seen and the mind becomes the seer. So when the mind becomes a seer, so mind knows the modifications of the eyes, what are the different things taking place in the eyes. So in that, the eyes can see clearly, it cannot see clearly, the eyes are blind, and so on. Those things are known to the mind, and the eye doesn't know that. Similarly, then mind itself becomes the object seen, and Sakshi Chaitanya, or the consciousness, is the seer there. So the modifications of mind are also known. So because of the modifications of the eyes, we have these eye specialists. If eyes was not an object seen, we wouldn't have had eye specialists. Similarly, mind is also an object seen, and therefore we have psychiatrists and psychologists. So who study the mind and their modifications. And Sakshi Chaitanya is the seer of the mind also. Then there are different thought modifications that go on in the mind. So these thought modifications in the fourth shloka we saw, Kama Sankalpa Sandeha Shraddha Ashraddhe Dhruti Itare Hi Dhi Bhihi Iti Evamadin Bhasayati Ekada Chitihi. So these are the various thought modifications that goes on in the mind, in the Sukshma Sharir or the subtle body. So Kama, various types of desires come, Sankalpa we take, we are determined to do something, then there is a Vikalpa also, then there is, we will do it later on, and then there is Sandeha, suspicion, a doubt whether it will be of any benefit or not. Then Shraddha. Shraddha is very important for all spiritual seekers. Without Shraddha, we cannot progress. So, Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. But the Shraddha in Vedantic, from the Vedantic point of view, the Shraddha is only temporary in the sense that we place Shraddha in something which we do not know now, so that eventually we will know it. Once we know it, it is not the question of Shraddha, then it is our direct knowledge. Then I explained in last session that the difference between Shraddha and Vishwas, or Shraddha and faith. Shraddha, the word Vishwas in Hindi or other languages and faith in English do not convey the complete meaning of the word Shraddha. Shraddha is not just faith or Vishwas. It is faith plus element of surrender. Vishwas plus the element of Samarpanam Bhava. That has to be there. Without that, it is not complete. Then only the meaning of Shraddha is complete. So, when there is faith plus element of surrender, totally surrendered, completely surrendered, then only it is complete. Now, the thing is that this kind of Shraddha, and this Shraddha is not lost, because from birth we have been programmed into, conditioned into thinking in particular way. We have been bombarded with lot of information at home also, with the close family members, in schools, in universities, with neighbors, with friends, with relatives and so on. We have been bombarded with lots of information, and that shapes our thinking and attitude also. We get thoroughly conditioned by that. Then we come with certain beliefs, and then certain more beliefs we also put into that. And when we start questioning our beliefs, it doesn't mean that faith is lost. Faith is never lost when we question our belief. It is a fearless search for truth, and it is never lost when we question our beliefs. So some of the beliefs that we may be harboring, that may be wrong, but we didn't have courage to question that, because no one should express any doubts for that it is gospel truth and all that thing. No, in Vedanta, nothing is such thing like that. Nothing is accepted without thoroughly it is investigated. Any statement that is there, it has to come at the 4 levels. It has to be proven whether it has come in the Shruti Pramana is there or not. First thing. Number 2 is that Yukti Pramana. Yukti Pramana, by logic, by rational analysis, by intellectual analysis, by scientific analysis, that has to be proven. Just because it has come in the scriptures, we need not accept it. So it has to be proven. Then only it is accepted through proper analysis. Then it has to be proven through the Drishtanta or example from the world of phenomena. And finally, it is the Anubhav Pramana. It has to be proven by a direct subjective experience of that. Then only that statement is accepted as true. Anyone can make any statement. There is no problem with that. But then that person who has made the statement, he should be able to prove it on all the 4 levels. The Shruti Pramana, Yukti Pramana, along with the Drishtanta Pramana, and then Anubhav Pramana. Then only it is accepted. So when we question our beliefs, our faith is not lost. Faith is always a fearless search for truth. It is never lost when we question our beliefs. Another important thing is that what is the test that we truly have this kind of Shraddha, where there is what you call element of surrender or not. The only test is that whether we have any worry in any corner of our mind or not. That is the only test, whether we have this Shraddha or not. Because Shraddha and Chinta, they both cannot stay together. Like 2 swords cannot be in one sheath, in one scabbard or one sheath. Similarly, in same place, Shraddha and Chinta cannot be. Either we have Shraddha or we have Chinta. When some visitor come to me and while talking, I ask how things are. They say everything is fine, but I'm worried about something. As soon as I hear this word worry, I immediately ask the question, do you have Shraddha in the Lord? Of course, Swamiji, what are you talking? Of course, I have Shraddha. But I said that there is something wrong with your Shraddha. Why do you ask? Because something you said you are worried about something. Yeah, I'm worried about something. Yes. Then I said that the Shraddha and worry cannot stay in the same place at the same time. Either you have Shraddha or you have Chinta. So if there is Shraddha, there is no room for Chinta. And if there is Chinta, there is no room for Shraddha. So there is a flaw in Shraddha. Either you are lying about your Shraddha or there is some flaw in your Shraddha. So therefore, that is the only test. Do we have Shraddha or not? That is tested by do we have any kind of worries or not in our mind. If we have any kind of worries, that means there is some flaw in our Shraddha. That is the only test for that. So, Shraddha, Ashraddhe, Dhruti Itare, Dhruti, that is the fortitude or power of endurance. Dhruti also is patience. And Dhruti Itare, Adhruti, impatience. Then Ri, that is the shyness. Some people, as I explained last time, they are shy about studying Vedanta or scriptures. What will others say? In fact, when I asked one person to attend my satsang, he retired, he was a municipal official, and he retired. I said, now we have got nothing to do. Why don't you attend the satsang? What will people say? This is exactly the word he used. What will people say? So, as if I told him to go and gamble or something like that. What will people say? I have just told him to attend satsang. So, this kind of shyness is uncalled for. Then, Dhihi, understanding. That is also another modification of the mind. Bihi, Bihi is the fear. Fear is the foremost modification of the mind. And etc. The iti evam adin, etc. The other modifications of the mind like krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, and so on. Anger, greed, arrogance, delusion, and jealousy, and so on. Bhasayati ekada chitihi. So all these modifications of the mind, they are illumined by one chiti, of pure consciousness. Sakshi chiti, pure consciousness. They are all synonymous words. Atma Chaitanya, Kutastha, Sakshi, Siti, Chiti, and all that. They are all synonymous. So up to here, we are done in our last session. Now we'll take up a new shloka for discussion. Shlok 5. No deti nastametyesha navruddhim yati nakshayam swayam vibhatya thanyani bhasayet sadhanam vina na udeti na astam iti esha na vruddhim yati nakshayam swayam vibhati atha anyani bhasayet sadhanam vina. Now, discussed about the objects seen and the seer eyes. Then we discussed about the eyes as seen and the seer mind. And then mind is also seen object. And then the seer is the Chaitanya Swarupa. Now here, na udeti na astam iti esha. What is this esha? Esha, as referred to in the first shloka as Sakshi, and in the fourth shloka as Chitihi. Sakshihi in the first shloka, Chitihi in the fourth shloka, they are the same synonym. Esha, that is the pure self, or pure consciousness. So now, here again, Sakshi is masculine gender, Chiti is feminine gender. Then we have Chaitanya. Chaitanya is neuter gender. So there are different names to that pure self, and it can come under masculine gender, feminine gender, neuter gender. That is not to signify it has got some gender, it has got some classification. It is to indicate that it is without any classification, without any gender. You cannot classify, you cannot even name. It is formless and attributeless, and this kind of classification also doesn't exist in that. Therefore, to emphasize that factor, the Sakshi is also, Chiti is also there, Chaitanya is also there, both masculine, feminine, neuter gender, everything is there, and it is beyond that. So, now first thing we need to understand is birth and death. Na udeti. Na udeti means it doesn't rise. That means it is not born. Na astamiti. That means it doesn't set. That is, it doesn't die. So there is no birth and death for this. For this Sakshi or Chiti or pure consciousness. Now, what is birth and death as we as lay people understand? Birth is when the fetus emerges out of the womb. Then we call it as birth. And the death is that when all bodily function ceases, then we call that as death. This is how we understand birth and death. So, birth is possible only when there is a prak abhava. Prak abhava means prior non-existence. something which is already existing, there cannot be a birth for that. Something that doesn't exist, and then there is a prior absence, prior non-existence is there, and then it is born. So prak abhava. So birth is there only for this something that is not existing now, not present now. So it is absence is there, prak abhava. So this birth is the last moment of the prior non-existence or prior absence or prak abhava. The birth takes place. And then when the death happens, then that is the first moment of the posterior non-existence or posterior absence. Pradvamsa abhava. Pradvamsa abhava is posterior non-existence or posterior absence, like that. So this form ceases to exist, then it goes into posterior absence. So this prak abhava, that is the prior non-existence, was also endless, and then posterior non-existence will also become endless now. So like that it is. Now we'll take a concrete example of a mud pot. Now before that mud pot was made, there was a prior non-existence of that mud pot. Okay, so it was absent since beginning this time. It was absent. It was not there. It was non-existent. Then the mud pot came into being. As soon as the mud pot was made, that was the first moment of the birth has taken place. So last moment of the prior non-existence, and then the present existence as the pot. First moment of the present existence as the pot. And when that pot is destroyed, then it goes into the first moment of the posterior non-existence of pradvamsa abhava. So this is how this birth and death is taking place. Again, another thing is that this pot, it can't illumine itself. It cannot illumine its own birth and death, for the simple reason that it is inert, it is insentient, so it cannot illumine its own birth and death. It is jada. So in fact, nothing can experience its own absence. Nothing can experience its own absence. No one can say that I am non-existent now, or I am absent now. So who is saying this? I am absent now, or I am non-existent now. Who is saying this? The sayer is still present. The one who said this is still present. Is existing, is present and not absent. So nothing can experience its own absence, its own abhava. Therefore, now who has seen the birth and destruction of the pot? I, the consciousness. The consciousness knows its prior non-existence, then its present existence, and then the posterior non-existence. So prak abhava and pradvamsa abhava is seen, and the present, a temporary existence, is also seen. It is known by the consciousness. I, the consciousness, only knows it. So this is I, the consciousness, is the witness to this birth and death. Consciousness itself has got no birth and death. There is no na udeti na astamiti esha. There is no birth and death to this consciousness. This consciousness has been there at all times. So there was no time when this consciousness or the pure self or the absolute truth or sakshi or chiti or chaitanya, it didn't exist. It has always existed. And there will be no time when it will cease to exist, because it is beyond the limitations or conditionings of time, space, object, causation, and so on. And this we have also seen in when we did Atma Bodh, and we revised the number of different reasons why we cannot be the body. So in that we came across one reason also: law of conservation of matter and law of conservation of energy. According to this law, which is taught in school level physics, matter can neither be created nor destroyed, but transformed from one form to another. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but transformed from one form to another. But both matter and energy, they are insentient, inert, non-living objects, matter and energy. To know the existence of matter and energy and their transformation, there has to be a conscious knower. Matter can be transformed, it cannot be destroyed completely. You can transform one form to another form, from solid to liquid, liquid to gas, and so on. You can burn something and turn it into ash, into smoke, into heat energy, and so on, but it cannot be destroyed completely. It will remain in some other form. That's it. Now there has to be a conscious knower to its existence and its transformation, to know its existence and transformation. So if this law of conservation is applicable to inert, insentient, non-living matter and energy, it should be all the more applicable to the conscious knower. So if matter and energy cannot be created nor destroyed, so this conscious knower also cannot be created nor destroyed. And this conscious knower is also not subject to transformation, unlike the matter and energy. Matter and energy is subject to transformation, but this conscious knower is not subject to transformation, because otherwise this conscious knower will not know the transformation taking place in the matter or energy. So this body is insentient matter, and the knower knows the transformation in the body and the mind and the sense organs and all. So therefore we cannot be the body, but we are the knower of the changes there. So this conscious knower has got no birth, no death, no transformation. It is beginningless and eternal. There was no time when I, the conscious self, never existed, and there will be no time when it will cease to exist. So this particular truth is enough to take away, to make us fearless. We become fearless by knowing this truth alone, that there is no birth and there is no death for us. So, na udeti, na astamiti esha. This is an important aspect that we should remember. Of course, when we keep revising the reasons for why we are not the body, we of course revise this particular law also, law of conservation. This is one of the reasons. If consciousness is born, say if we assume that, okay, consciousness is also born, if you assume that, then what happens? Then the thing is that who knew its prior absence? Prag abhava. Who knew its prior absence? Suppose it is said that, okay, consciousness knew its prior absence. That means consciousness was already present. It was already existing. So, therefore, it cannot be that it was absent all the time. So, if it was known through consciousness, then consciousness is already existing. So, it is anantah. So, therefore, now it cannot be, there is no birth or no death and no transformation. Then, in the second part of the shloka, na vruddhim yati nakshayam. So, na udeti na astamiti esha, na vruddhim yati nakshayam. So now it has got no modification, no growth and modification and decay. So there is no growth, modification or decay for this pure self. Na vruddhim, there is no growth for that. Nakshayam, no decay for that. Now what is subject to growth and decay? Growth and decay, only those entities are subject to growth and decay which is bound by the limitations of time, space, objects and causation. Only these entities, they are subject to growth and decay. So the self is not bound by the limitations of this space, time, objects, causation and so on. So it is not subject to this kind of modifications. But the body itself is subject to modification. Body, sense organs, everything, gross physical body, everything is subject to modification. They go 6 types of the Shadvikara, it is called as. So what are the Shadvikara? Because yourself cannot undergo modification, because it is the substratum of all modification. All modification can be perceived and known on the substratum of an unchanging background. So this substratum is unchanging. Against an unchanging background only you can know the changes. So not in a changing environment we cannot know any changes. Like the example of me sitting in the train, middle train, and the other two trains also, all three trains running on the parallel tracks in the same direction at the same speed, you feel as if the other two trains are not moving. So we are part of transformation. So an unchanging background, there has to be an unchanging background of the cinema screen to see the play of light and sound. The changing play of light and sound. So this is immutable. Pure self is immutable, unchanging, not subject to any modification. And it is free from all the Shad Vikara. What are the Shad Vikara? First is Jayate. Jayate, that is, it is born. There is birth. Jayate Asti, then it exists. After being born, it exists. Its existence is there. And then Vardhate, it grows. So birth, then existence, then growth. Then here again, the third one is that Viparinamate. Viparinamate means metamorphosis. It undergoes metamorphosis. Different changes are there. Like in insects and other creatures, metamorphosis is a process from the egg and tadpole and so on, or cocoon and so on, like that. Different processes are there. In human beings also, it undergoes, the childhood is there, infancy, childhood, then puberty, and then some modifications come during puberty, and then the adulthood. So there is growth, birth, existence, then growth, and then metamorphosis during that period itself. And then apakshayate. Apakshayate is the decay. Once it has reached its pinnacle, then it starts decaying. Apakshayate. And then in the end, vinashyate. So these are the Shad Vikaras. Jayate, Vardate, Jayate, Asti, Vardate, Aparinamate, Apakshayate, and Vinashyate. These are the Shad Vikaras. So this body undergoes the Shad Vikaras. This consciousness doesn't undergo the Shad Vikaras. So this is not na vruddhim yati na kshayam. This is not for the pure self. Then Swayam Vibhati iti atha anyani bhasayet sadhanam vina. So it is free of these 6 modifications, and therefore now it is changeless, it is self-illumined, it is of the nature of effulgence, and therefore it is self-illumined and it also illumines everything around it. So vibhati atha anyani bhasayat sadhanam vina. And itself is self-illumined, it doesn't need anything else to be illumined. So bhasayat sadhanam vina. Without any aid, it is self-illumined. So having known such a self, which doesn't have birth, na udeti, na astamiti esha, nor death, nor there is any growth in that, nor is there any decay in that. It is self-illumined. It is a substratum of all changes, all vikaras, all modification, and it illumines, and it is the knower of everything. It is the absolute pure knowledge. Having known this makes us fearless. Then we become fearless when this is known to us. Having said that, now we move on to another shlokam, shlok 6. Now here, further detail of this is given in the 6th shloka. Chichaya veshato buddhau bhanam dhistu dvidastita ekaham kritiranya syat antah karana rupini. Chichaya aveshatah buddhau bhanam dhistu dvidastita eka ahankriti anya syat. So now regarding this Drashta, Drig Drishya, seer scene, we are entering a place where now we are talking about this ego. This is Chit Chaya Avashato Buddho. So in the Buddhi, there is this Chidabhasa, the reflected consciousness. Bhanam Dhitu. Bhanam Dhitu Vidastita. It manifests in two ways. And what are these two? One is the ego and the other is the antakarana. Eka ahankutihi anyahasya antakarana rupi. So that these are the two manifestations, chaya. Now here, first thing is that a disease can be cured provided the patient having that disease exists. For the disease to exist, there has to be a patient. Without that patient, that disease cannot exist. So there has to be a patient in which that disease is there. So if the patient with that disease exists, then it can be cured. If there is no patient with that disease, you cannot cure anything. There is nothing to be cured then, isn't it? So in reality, who is the sansari? Because here comes the question, who is the sansari? So who is the sansari? Who is the one who is miserable, who is unhappy, who is miserable, who suffers, who is in sorrow, who is dukhi? So this particular thing, Ramana Maharishi always used to say this. Whenever somebody comes to meet him, now generally Mahatmas, people go to meet Mahatmas not for spirituality. 99.9999% of the people who go to meet Mahatmas, they go with their sansaric issues, not for spiritual knowledge, not for realization of self or spiritual knowledge or sadhana or guidance in sadhana. Very few go there, but most of them will go with their worldly issues, sansaric issues. So when somebody is to approach Ramana Maharishi, Bhagwan, I am miserable. So Ramana Maharishi used to ask, who is miserable? So then this person will tell his name. So then Ramana Maharishi would ask him, are you the name? Because your parents gave you this name, you call yourself by this name. And if you don't like this name, you can always publish in the gadget and change your name. So are you this name? So I am asking you, who is miserable? You say that I am miserable. Who is miserable? Let me know that. So then he is telling that, getting fed up into that, then he is telling that you can see me, I am sitting here, I am miserable. Who is sitting there? This body you can see. Are you sure you are this body? So he is telling in different terms. So you do not know who is miserable first. First go and inquire who is miserable. When you come to the conclusion that this entity is miserable, then you come to me. Then I'll give a solution. So first find out, you are confused. You are giving me a name and telling that you are I am miserable. But who is this I who is miserable? And you are giving your name and then you are telling this body is miserable. Are you sure you are the body? So first find out who is miserable. Who is this sansari who is miserable? So it is neither the self nor the gross body or the subtle body who is miserable. It is this who is miserable then. It is neither the gross body, neither the pure self, nor the gross body, nor the subtle body is miserable. It is the Chidabhasa. Chidabhasa basically where the ego manifests and ego becomes sentient because of the Chidabhasa, reflected consciousness. And that entity is miserable. So, Sukshma, all that is subtle is very pervasive. Anything that is subtler will be more pervasive than the gross. So the subtlest will be the most pervasive. So throughout the gross, consciousness is the most pervasive. It is there everywhere. But it is reflected only in the subtle body. And it appears enlivened. The subtle body appears enlivened, but subtle body is also insentient, inert. Like gross body, subtle body is also inert. It gets enlivened because of this reflected consciousness. It gets enlivened, and then subtle body in turn enlivens the inert gross body also. It is like that by turn. So, Chichaya aveshato buddhau bhanam dhitu dudha sthitaha. So, gross body, and because inert, now why other objects cannot, they appear as insentient? Simply because there is no subtle body in that. Everything doesn't appear sentient because, of course, consciousness is all pervading everywhere at all times. The reflection, it also, but it doesn't reflect everywhere. Though it is there everywhere, it doesn't reflect everywhere. Because for that to reflect, there has to be a subtle body. Without the subtle body, there cannot be the reflection. So inert objects do not have subtle body, so therefore they appear inert. Now, example, earth, the sunlight falls everywhere on this earth, but it is reflected only on the surface of water or any other surface where it has got ability to reflect, not everywhere. So it has to have subtle body to reflect this consciousness. Now, we will take a few examples now so that this concept is very clear. Why, if the consciousness is all pervading in and through every particle of this entire existence, even through a particle of mud or stone or everything, why they are insentient and inert, and why certain things are living and sentient when it is there everywhere? So now we'll see that sunlight falls on water and earth equally. So, but it will not reflect on the mound of earth, but it will reflect only in water. There is something in the water which enables it to reflect sunlight, but that is not there in the mound of earth. Now, same thing, we take another example. There is a mirror and mud pot is there, and both of them are produced from mud only. Mirror is also produced from mud and pot is also produced from mud, but our reflection, we can see our reflection in the mirror but not on the mud pot, though they are produced by the same mud. So it has to have something. We may think that there may be something which is lacking. Either there is the self itself is different in inert matter, or there is some difference in the matter, inert matter itself. One of the two has to be there. Why one reflects and other doesn't reflect? So why one is sentient and other is not sentient? Because gross body is also matter, subtle body is also matter, stone is also matter. Why stone is insentient and the gross body and subtle body appears enlivened, though both are matter only? So there has to be something special in that. So there has to be an ability to reflect. Similarly, we take another example. Both diamond and coal, they are made out of carbon. Diamond and coal made out of carbon. But diamond has got ability to reflect. If a ray of light falls on diamond, it will reflect. But if a ray of light falls on coal, it is dull. It will not reflect. Though both are made out of carbon alone. So something difference is there. Some difference is there in that. So similarly, why though this consciousness is all pervading everywhere in all names and forms, we see inert, insentient table, chair and materials such like that. It is there in plants also, animals also, other creatures are also there, and human beings are there. But all of them are not sentient and living. Some are insentient, inert, some are living like that. So there has to be something, some difference has to be there, because of which they, the consciousness cannot express itself fully there, cannot reflect there, and therefore they appear only inert and insentient. Whereas, though other objects are also inert and insentient, they appear to be enlivened because of this consciousness getting reflected there. So, this self and subtle body and the gross body, we'll take an example now how this manifestation happens. What is the process of this manifestation? The subtle body and gross body, and how this self is connected with that. As we have seen that self of pure consciousness is all pervading at all times. Now we'll take an example that has particularly been given in this text also, about a dark room is there and nothing can be seen inside because of the darkness. One day somebody discovered that there is light inside the room, and then all the objects in the room can be seen very clearly. When it was investigated, it was found that outside the room, in the veranda, there was a bucket of water, and the sunlight fell on that water and reflected, and in that reflected light, things could be seen inside the room. Now, this is the example we take here. So, in the reflected light alone, things can be seen. According to physics, pure light cannot be seen unless it is reflected on something. So, pure light that is coming from the sun, passing through the space. In the space where there are no dust particles, reflected light cannot be seen. So, it will appear dark only. Though the light is passing through that space, it will appear dark only. Only when it gets somewhere, some dust particles are there or something is there to reflect on it, then only it can be seen. Otherwise, it cannot be seen. So now we have got this consciousness, the pure self. Then we have got the subtle body and the gross body. Here we have got this room is there. In the illumined, in the reflected light, all the objects in the room is seen. Similarly now, this bucket is a representation of gross physical body. And the water in that bucket is the subtle body. Okay. So the water in the bucket is subtle body, and the bucket itself is the gross body, and the pure self. The light of consciousness falls in the water, on the water in the bucket, and gives a reflection. And in that reflection, everything is seen and known. That reflected light, everything is seen and known. Now, here, what happens if the bucket develops a leak? If the bucket develops a leak, we have to pour the water into another bucket, isn't it? So the relationship of that water with the previous bucket which sprung a leak is gone. Now the relationship develops with the new bucket. So now it is said that so and so is dead and gone. We make a statement, so and so is dead and gone. So and so is dead and gone. What is dead? What has gone? And has anything left behind? If something, is there something that is left behind? So, dead and gone. So, it is like that, the gross body, the bucket developed leak, it was left, it has become dead now. And out of that, the water which was there, it has gone into another bucket. The subtle body, the gross body is dead, and the subtle body has gone into another bucket. And what remains? Pure consciousness is all pervading, all times remains there only, everywhere at all times. So the subtle body has gone into the new gross body. And then it begins a new relationship with the new, that body, identifies with that, and then experiences all the experiences of the body, of the destiny of that body. So this is what it is. This light of consciousness illumines everything, all the names and forms. Though this light of consciousness is of the nature of Sat and Chit, pure existence and pure consciousness or pure knowledge and infinite bliss, bliss absolute. It should not be taken as two different aspects of the pure self. It is the same thing. We had discussed that in Atmabodh also. That which is Sat itself is Chit, that which is Chit itself is Sat, and that which is Sat and Chit itself is Anandam. So it should not be taken as different things. It is like this, that water can manifest, fire has got both light and heat, but water can manifest only heat of that fire, whereas wood can manifest both heat and light. So similarly, different entities have got different capacities to reflect things. or absorb things, and that is how they appear. Now, again coming to the water, this water and bucket example. Now, the bucket of water is steady and calm and very clear, clean water is there. The reflection also will be very clear. And if the water is disturbed and it is not very clear, clean, and it is disturbed also, then the image will not be, the reflection will not be clear. So similarly, in a tranquil and quiet, undisturbed mind only, Atma Bodha can take place, not in a disturbed mind. Sattvic mind is very calm and peaceful. In such a sattvic mind only, the subtle truths about subtle Vedantic truths can be comprehended. Rajasic mind is disturbed because of too many desires. It is agitated and disturbed because of too many desires, and therefore it is unable to concentrate on the subtle truths spoken of in the Vedantic text. That is the Rajasic mind. Then we have this Tamasic mind. Tamasic mind is so dull-witted that it cannot comprehend the subtle subjects like Vedanta. Therefore, many people, if they are told about this Vedantic text, they may attend once, one day they may attend, after that they will disappear. Because it is too tough for them, too difficult for them. Therefore, there are very few people who attend Vedantic classes. There will be thousands attending the Bhagavad Katha and Ram Katha, there will be thousands, because there you don't have to use your brains. You have to just listen to a story. So listening to a story is very easy. We are relaxed and listening to a story. Here you have to be alert, because if you miss something, then the whole thing goes wrong. It is so subtle. So therefore, depending upon the quality of the mind, the reflection will be clear, the mind is good, and the knowledge can take place. So, chit chaya veshato buddhau bhanam dhi tur vidhastitaha eka ahankritihi anyaha syad antakarana rupini. So now, now having reflected this, now in the reflection, it also manifests in two forms. Eka ahankritihi anyaha syad antakarana. One is the ego and the other is antakarana. Antakarana is the inner equipment. Actually, there is this Antakarana Chatushta is there. Mana, Buddhi, Chitta and Ahankar is attached to that. So Ahankar is already given here. Eka Ahankritihi Anyaha. So one is Ahankruti and the other is Antakarana. Antakarana comprising of mind, intellect and memory. So this is mind, intellect and memory. Mana, Buddhi and Chitta. Chitta is, there is a difference between Chiti and Chitta. Chit and Chitta. Chit is consciousness. Chitta is memory. So you don't mix up with these two. Chit and Chitta. Chiti and Chit, they are same. But Chitta is different. Chitta is memory. So we can very easily confuse in that. So Chiti and Chit, they are consciousness. Chitta is memory. So the other three, Antakarana has got mind, intellect and this memory, Mana, Buddhi and Chitta. So this is how it manifests. And then ego is identified with all the three. It is identified with the mind also, modifications of the mind, all the emotions, feelings and sentiments. It is identified with the modifications of the intellect, all the thought modifications, and then all the memories also. It is identified with that, and then it is able to recall that. So this Eka Ahankritihi Anyaha Syat Antakarana Rupini. This is the Antakarana Rupa. Now, having said this, how this inert form made up of water and minerals is enlivened by consciousness is discussed in the next shloka. This is shloka 7. What is this shloka? Chaya hankara yoraikyam taptaya pindavan matam tadahankara tadatmya Dehashchetanatamagad Chaya Ahankarayoho Aikyam Taptaya Pindavat Matam Tad Ahankara Tadatmyat Deha Chetanam Agat. So now, Chaya Ahankarayo Ekyam. That is the identity between the Chidabhasa and the ego. Chidabhasa and ego. So, a reflection is different from water. They are not the same. Water is different and reflection is different. But they appear as one. So, reflection has no movement and water has got no light. And yet we see an illumined ripple in that. Similarly, filament has got no luminosity. Electricity has got no form. But when that electricity manifests through that filament, then we see a glowing filament in the bulb. So the luminosity has got no form and the filament has got no light, no luminosity. And yet they come together and they appear luminous. So similarly, here the example that is given is that Taptaya Pindavat Matam. This is a common example you have seen in Atmabodh also. The spherical iron ball which has got a particular shape, size, weight, cold to touch and black in color. Fire has got light, color, heat it has got. And then when they are put together, when it is heated to red hot, then it becomes a red hot ball. So that ball which didn't have heat and light, heat and color, borrowed it from that fire. And the fire didn't have a shape or a size or weight. Now it got the shape and size and weight of the ball. This is called as Anyonya Dharma Adhyasa. Anyonya Dharma Adhyasa, mutual superimposition of attributes or qualities. So iron has got one set of qualities, fire has got another set of qualities. This is mutually superimposed and we have got a red hot iron ball. Now that red hot iron ball can also give heat to other objects around it. So this is called as Anyonya Dharma Adhyasa. Now, Tad Ahankara Tadatmyat Deha Chetana Tamagat. Now similarly, now this example we have taken here, so also now this Chidabhasa. Chidabhasa, that is reflected consciousness, is different from ego. Because of this Chidabhasa, Chidabhasa is sentient and ego is just an inert object. So this sentient Chidabhasa enlivens this ego also. Chidabhasa is sentient and changeless because it is reflected, it is light only, reflected light. It is part of light only. Without light, there is no reflection. It is a part of that. So it is sentient and it is changeless, immutable. At the same time now, this ego is subject to modification. It is inert. It is subject to change, mutation. It is not immutable. So this Chidabhasa enlivens this ego and then it becomes sentient ego, technically known as Jiva or Jiva Bhava. So we were discussing about who is a Sansari in our last verse. So now we are coming to that point, who is a Sansari. So this Jiva or Jiva Bhava manifests when this ego identifies with this Chidabhasa, reflected consciousness, gets enlivened, and then this is the Jiva or a Sansari, Chidabhasa. It identifies, now this in turn identifies with the gross body, enlivens it. And then it has got Anyonya Dharma Adhyasa. So whatever problems belong to that gross body is mine now. Like the weight, shape and size of the iron ball, the fire took it. And then the heat and light of fire, the ball took it. Similarly, now the ego identifies with the gross body, and all the problems of this gross body becomes that ego's problem, identifying with that. So, tada ahankara tadatmyat deha chetanam agata. This is the mutual anyonya adhyasa, superimposition of mutual attributes. So this, having identified with this body, now this ego says, aham deha, I am this body. Now it has got nothing to do with this body. Now it says that this is what I am. Now this is taken as real instead of just taking it as an empirical reality or just a relative reality. It is taken as real, and therefore instead of taking as a relative reality, and that causes all the problems in this world. It is not the personal one. All around the world, it is this ego enlivened by the Chidabhasa, identifying with the body, causing all the problems in this world. At the personal level, in the family, outside in the society, or in the nation, or in the world around, at international level, all the problems are there because of this ego enlivened by the Chidabhasa. This Jiva Bhava identifies with the body, and all the problems start. If this thing doesn't happen, there is no problem. So now this self itself is beyond. Tada ahankara tadatma deha chetanatam agat. So now this is how it's attained, this body as its own self, that this is what I am. Now the pure self has got nothing to do with that. Pure self is beyond all the modifications of this body, sense organs and all these things. Nothing belongs to it. It has got no birth, no death, no caste, no religion, no race, no gender, nothing. But now that ego enlivened by Chidabhas, identifying with the body, now it has got a race, nationality, caste, religion, name, gender, everything it has got. And on the basis of these, there are differences in this world, and all the conflicts will start. At the level, at the international level, at personal level, everywhere it will start. So this is the problem. Though this GP is this gross body, this is inert. And then one thing, sleep proves that this gross body is inert. This is one proof that this gross body is inert, because this gross body doesn't know anything. In deep sleep state, nothing is known to this gross body. Now, having said that, the ego identifies with itself with the three entities. What are the three entities that it identifies with itself? Here now it is not the causal body or the subtle body or the gross body. Of course it is identifying with that. That is a different thing. But there are three entities with which this ego identifies with. And unless we get rid of this identification with these three entities, there is no liberation. So the ego itself identifies with three entities. The cause of identification is now explained. By this kind of discrimination, we can free ourselves from the bondage experienced due to identification. Now this is given in the 8th shloka. Next shloka. What is the 8th shloka now? Ahankarasya tadatmyam chichhaya deha sakshidhi sahajam karmajam bhranti janyam cha trividham kramat. So ahankarasya tadatmyam chichhaya deha sakshidhi sahajam karmajam bhranti janyam cha trividham kramat. Now before we continue, or should we continue now, or does anybody have any questions in the previous shloka that we have done, or should I continue?
Swamiji, I do have a question.
Okay.
Question. Should I ask the question?
Yeah. So we'll have it then. We'll just do the questions then now.
Yeah.
And then we'll conclude after that. We'll take the next shloka after that. Okay. Ask.
Achha, Swamiji, for last so many years, I came to you at Padmini's place also, and you explained so many scriptures, including Drig Drishya and Viveka. But the confusion about reflected consciousness has not gone away. Now, what is the relationship between the reflected consciousness, ego, and causal body, or say Anandamaya Kosha? This is question 1. And question 2, why it is said reflection of consciousness and not consciousness, pure consciousness? This.
The thing is that, as we said, that light cannot be seen as per physics. According to physics, light cannot be seen. Only reflected light can be seen. And this reflection can take place only in a reflecting medium, if that medium is capable of reflecting. And therefore, though consciousness is everywhere, everything is not enlivened because it has to have a reflecting medium. In the body, there is a subtle body is there, which is the reflecting medium. As we saw, all the objects do not reflect light. What is the difference then? So we have already seen that, is the self different in all the inert matter, or is there some difference in the inert matter itself? So the difference is in the inert matter. Self is the same everywhere. So sunlight falls everywhere, it is the same. Why it is reflected? And reflected light, sunlight we cannot see unless there is a medium of reflection, we cannot see that. And therefore in the cosmos, through which space through which the sunlight is passing, that space is in darkness because there is nothing to reflect. It is in darkness. Only when the light falls on something that it can reflect, then only we see light. So sunlight falls everywhere, but it is not reflected everywhere. Only when it is reflected, it is seen. Similarly, consciousness is everywhere. Only when it is reflected, it can be seen. So therefore, now it has to have a subtle body to reflect. Otherwise, consciousness can remain as it is without the need of any of this, and the existence of names and forms. It can remain as it is. If the names and forms are there, then the explanation given for the inert objects, sentient and insentient. Why certain things sentient, why certain things are insentient? What is the reason? They appear, and those who are the things, the entities that appear to be, they are sentient, they only appear to be sentient. Remember that. Our gross body appears to be sentient. Gross body is an inert matter. It appears to be sentient because of consciousness that is manifesting to that. Now the thing is that when this subtle body where the consciousness falls and is reflected in that, that is where the thought arises. Subtle body is basically intellect. This is the subtle body, mind intellect equipment. That is where the thought arises. I know, aham janami. This is the eruption of the ego, I. Without that subtle body, this consciousness cannot reflect and the ego cannot arise. We can see in our deep sleep state experiences also we go through, because in our deep sleep state, the gross body we are not aware of. Subtle body is also temporarily absorbed into its own source, and because it is temporarily absorbed into its own source, there is no manifestation of ego there also in the deep sleep state. In fact, in the deep sleep state, we are closest to our real self. And yet we are aware of the deep sleep experience. When we get up from sleep, from deep sleep state, we do say that we didn't know anything, but we say, I enjoyed it. So that means there was something that was aware of the experience of the deep sleep state. The memory of deep sleep state is still there. So this ego is born. So ego is born out of this. If the Chidakash is not there, if the reflected consciousness is not there, Chidavas is not there, then there is no question of any ego. And therefore, temporarily, when the subtle body is also absorbed, the body is unconscious in the deep sleep state, temporarily, because that ego is also absent. But we are completely existent. It is not that because the ego is absent, we are also absent. No, we are existent and we are aware of the experience of the deep sleep also. I had a very sound sleep. I enjoyed it very much. I had a deep sleep. I didn't have any disturbance at all. So that is what it is. So now without ego also, that consciousness was there, though the body is gross. So understand this very clearly. The relationship between the self is all that is there. The other things are temporary appearance only. The body, the gross body, the subtle body, the causal body is the cause of subtle and the gross body. Anyway, the ignorance. And then these are the three things, the Chidabhasa and the ego. When that identification happens, then this ego, enlivened by Chidabhasa, It enlivens the subtle body and the gross body. Because of the subtle body, it awakens, the ego arises. So subtle body is enlivened, and a subtle body in turn enlivens the gross body. This is how the manifestation takes place. If this identification is not there, if this causal body is not there, the first ignorance, then this identification will not happen. We will be always in that infinite Swarupa only, and nothing else. So it is all the question of our own ignorance. When we are doing this 8th shloka and 9th shloka, more clarification will come. How this ignorance has come, how this identification has come. That is the Sahajam, Karmajam and Bhranti Janya. So then, if that causal body itself is not there, there is no question of anything else. Then we as pure self, I as pure self, we can remain always as pure self. That's it. Because of this non-apprehension of a real self, all the other things start. If that one thing doesn't happen, then nothing will happen. Because it is because of that one thing, non-apprehension of our own real self, all the samsara has begun like this. So deep sleep state also is, this Anandamaya Kosh is actually basically it is a causal body. It is in ignorance. In deep sleep, though we are closest to our own self, we are not aware of that. It is not in awareness. Like in Samadhi, we are in awareness, but in deep sleep state, we are not in awareness. So though we are closest to our real self, ego is also absent, and therefore we are happy. That is why it is called as Anandamaya Kosha. You see? So therefore, one has to understand this very clearly. Deep sleep state is minus the ego. Pure self has got no ego. Deep sleep state has got no ego. So both the state are minus the ego. But the difference is that in the pure self, there is awareness, and in the deep sleep state, there is no awareness. Ignorance is there, the causal body is still there, and therefore there is no knowledge, there is no awareness of it. Only we remember through memory that we enjoyed the sleep. So this is how the connection is between ego. Ego is temporarily absent. It doesn't, because the subtle body itself is absorbed temporarily. So it manifests partially in the dream state and fully in the waking state, but it is absorbed in the deep sleep state. So there is, the ego is also absent there. So only the causal body is there in the deep sleep state. Therefore, there is no awareness of the
Swamiji, which side ignorance lies? Self-conscious side, it doesn't lie. The other side, that is other three bodies, they are inert. So how that ignorance arises?
That is the $1 million question. Actually, there is nothing. There is no ignorance. When we realize this, you see, when we realize this, then we also realize that there was never a time when I didn't exist, and it is only because I mistook something, and then I forgot about something, and then it happened like that. So the thing is that, how did this forgetfulness of ourself happen? When exactly it happened, that nobody knows, because ignorance is anadi. Remember that ignorance is anadi. Why I got into this thing, this trouble? Ignorance is anadi, it is beginningless. And intellect itself is the product of ignorance. And therefore, intellect cannot know when this ignorance happened to me, that I forgot my own self and got into all this mess. So intellect cannot know, because intellect is product of ignorance. And the notion of time takes place only in the intellect. Okay, so therefore, when was this ignorance and how it happened? So when was this ignorance? That is timeless, that is beginningless. But it can end. It is not eternal. It can end with knowledge. So therefore, we do not go into the investigation of why it happened and when it happened, because anyway it cannot be found out, because we try to think only through intellect. Intellect itself is the product of ignorance, and the concept of time happens only in the intellect. So it was before time, before the concept of time. So therefore, it is anadi, endless. So therefore, this cannot, it cannot be known. It is neither belonging to the self nor belonging to the gross or subtle body. It is belonging to the jiva bhava, and it is only a bhava. It has got no reality. The ego, which is enlivened by this chidabhasa, is called as jiva or jivatva. It attains jivatva or jiva bhava, and that jiva bhava is the sansari who suffers. And it is like it appears in its own absence. It appears like the mirage water. For all purposes, during the hot summer afternoon, on the desert sand, we can see the mirage water, but it appears there, no doubt, but actually it has got no existence. So also this so-called Jiva Bhava is also an appearance. But that appearance causes so much trouble. The person who doesn't know about the reality of the mirage water, he'll keep running after that mirage water. This is what is happening to us. We are not aware of it, and therefore we fall into this rigmarole again and again and again. So if this thing is very clear to us, then we will never take anything seriously in life. It will help us in our sadhana also.
So at the time of Sakshatkar Swamiji, at the time of Sakshatkar, the intellect realizes the truth?
No.
Then
you have to go beyond intellect. When you discard the identity, when that ego is dissolved, it is not that ego is dissolved and you realize the truth. It is all happening simultaneously. As long as the Chidabhas is there, once you understand this, so as long as the Chidabhas is there, with the Chidabhas, this ego is there, the gross and subtle body is there, this ego is the problem. Let the gross and subtle body be there, it doesn't matter. The moment the ego gets dissolved, then immediately the realization happens, the awareness of the self is there, pure self is there. Then,
so therefore it is called knotless knot. K-N-O-T.
Yeah.
Eh?
It is the granthi, it is the Hridaya granthi. So that is what it loosens up. It is just a knot, it is loosened up, and that's it.
Okay.
So actually, to say it is very easy, like when we give an example of mirage water, okay, the one who is ignorant of the phenomena of mirage water, he'll keep running after that, but at some point in time, he'll realize that it is some kind of a illusion, some kind of funny thing. There is no real water. It will take some time. Until then, he keeps running after that. Okay. Same thing is happening here also. So once that is realized, that once that ego gets dissolved, you are into the pure self. It was always there. It is not that you are not there now. You are also now also you are the same thing. Only what is barring us from having full awareness of our own real self is only this ignorance, this ego, which has to get dissolved. And dissolving the ego is not that easy, but it is not impossible also. At some point in time, all of us without exception will dissolve our ego and be in the pure self at all times.
So Swamiji, one small question.
Yes.
That means we summarize that realization is a process and nobody actually realizes, nothing realizes.
Actually, what we are doing in the scriptural study is unlearning what we have learned.
Right.
We have learned a lot of useless things. For example, I am the body, I am the sense organs, I am the mind, I am the intellect, I am the feelings and emotions and sentiments, I am the thought, good thought and bad thought. All of these are I am, all these. Apart from that, then there are other things around us. And I have to deal with that. He is my friend, that fellow is my enemy, and all these things. So we have to unlearn all that.
Right.
So unlearning process starts. Vedantic sadhana is only unlearning. You unlearn everything what we have learned over the lives together, millions of lives together, and when the unlearning process finishes, what remains is what the pure self.
Correct, correct.
Yeah. Anybody else? Anybody wants to ask question?
I have one question.
Who's that?
Yes.
Ashashwari. Yeah, okay.
Swamiji, there was this, when I had learned Tattva Bodh, I had learned that the individual who identifies with himself in the waking state is called Vishwa, and the individual who identifies in the dream state is Tejas, and the individual who identifies in the dream is called Pragya. So what does Pragya mean?
Prajna, that is the entity in the deep sleep state. The waker is the Vishwa, dreamer is the Taijasa, and the deep sleeper is the Prajna. Now, Ajna means ignorance. Then Prajna. Prayena Ajnaha, that means almost ignorance. almost ignorance, means 99.99% we can say almost ignorance, because it is not totally 100% ignorance, because when we wake up from the deep sleep, at least we have the memory of a good sleep and not a disturbed sleep. So therefore it is called as pradnya, but it is ignorance only. So this deep sleep state is also Anandamaya Kosha, and it is also causal body. Causal body is nothing but ignorance, primordial ignorance. That is what the causal body is all about. So therefore it is called as, it is come from, you break it down into pradnya as adnya, adnyana, from adnyana, adnya, and pradnya, prayana, adnya, like that.
And one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it clear?
Swamiji,
Rajesh?
when you talked about the individual, the reflection in the bucket of water is called the Jeev, and that same sun or Atman which is reflecting in the ocean is called Ishwar. So at a macrocosmic level, when that same Brahman is reflecting on the ocean, it's called Ishwar. So does this Ishwar also have a Chidabhas ego? Because there's a similarity between both of them in microcosmic and macrocosmic.
It is not that Brahman or the pure self reflected in the ocean is Ishvara. No. Who is Ishvara? Ishvara is Brahman with the conditioning of Maya Shakti. Ishvara doesn't have Antakarana.
Okay. There's no ego here.
So it is egoless. Ishvara is also egoless. Ishvara also doesn't have any Antakarana. It is only the same pure self with the conditioning of Maya Shakti is called as Ishvara. Okay. So, and Ishvara doesn't have Antakarana. So therefore, there is no problem for Ishvara. There is no question of any pure self, the light of consciousness reflecting there, and then Ishvara to manifest something like that. No, it is only the condition of Maya Shakti, and ours is the Jiva's conditioning is ignorance. That is all. Otherwise, both are Brahman only, absolute self alone.
So the ego is missing in the macrocosmic Ishwar. Okay.
The Ishvara, because Ishvara doesn't have Antakarana.
Okay.
And
Thank you,
therefore, in our Sanatan Dharma, people can go and abuse the Lord without anything. He doesn't have Antakarana. You can't do that in other religions and their gods.
Anybody else? Anybody else has a question? Otherwise we'll call it a day.
Okay, we'll conclude it then.
Yeah, sorry.
Om Purnamata Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Hari Om.